House of EdTech, Episode 87.
Hey, I'm Miles, and you're listening to the House of EdTech with my daddy, Chris Nessie.
This episode of the House of EdTech was made possible by my awesome supporters. Many thanks to Jeff Herb, Peggy George, Mark Grindell, Brent Warner, Dan Gallagher, and Jen Giffen. If you'd like to become an awesome supporter of the podcast, simply go to chrisnessie.com/awesome. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. Hey, welcome back inside the House of EdTech podcast. Thank you so much for taking time to make this podcast and this episode part of your podcast PD. Got a great episode for you today. I have the EdTech thought, an EdTech recommendation, and of course, the legendary House of EdTech VIP. My conversation in this episode is one that I recently had with Bruce Reicher. He's a middle school TV production teacher here in New Jersey, and I'm actually going to be getting to that right away, so I'm changing things up a little bit in terms of how I format this episode. So we're going to get right into the interview, and then I will see you back on the other side with the EdTech thought, recommendation, some feedback, and of course the House of EdTech VIP. So without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Bruce Reicher. Now I'd like to welcome in my featured guest for this episode, and today I'm talking with Bruce Reicher. He's a technology teacher, specifically a TV production teacher from Upper Saddle River Middle School in New Jersey. He is a Google certified level 1 and 2 educator. He's a proud dad. He's a Knick and a Met fan. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Bruce, welcome to the House of EdTech.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Now, today we are going to dive into one of your big passions, and that is WeVideo. But before you got into WeVideo, obviously you were doing what you do, which is being a TV production teacher. You work at the middle school level. Talk a little bit about how that came about for you.
Sure, Chris. I have a background in radio and television. I actually went to college for that, and then had taught for a while as an elementary school teacher. Eventually became a technology teacher, and when there was an opening in my school to move up to start a TV studio, it brought my two worlds together, and we started building a TV studio in my school. And once a studio was built, then we had to put the curriculum together, and I'm lucky enough to have it as an 8th grade class every single day.
Now, since this is the House of EdTech, we have to dive into the tech part of it. So what did TV production look like? And this is also a crossover with my love of history. What did TV production look like 15 years ago for you as a teacher?
15 years ago for me as a teacher, I'm on a G3 all-in-one in my computer lab, and I'm using some software called Avid Cinema. Although I remember Avid Cinema at the time, once you were done, you were not done so quickly because nothing rendered in real time. So if you'd be done with a video that was, 15 minutes, it might take an hour and a half to render. So it's definitely a lot slower when you got done. But the process of making the videos is still the same. It's just that the tools that we have now are, much better and easier to use.
Can you talk about the progression of tools that you've gone through over the last decade and a half?
I started out, software side with Avid Cinema. And then I started, I think, with iMovie 2 or 3, all the way up to iMovie 10. And this year I finally switched over from iMovie to WeVideo. And then hardware side, I think I started shooting first, and you'll appreciate this. I think on a Sony Mavica camera that took pictures. I was in an elementary school and I made videos of every event. So I was so happy that I got about, 10 or 15 pictures on a floppy disk. And I would, have about 20 floppy disks on me. So I'd be able to get enough pictures of the events and then use the video. Actually, Sony Mavica took video, probably 240p, and also the still pictures. From the Sony Mavica, I think I moved up through the Canon series, the ZR series, 100, 200, 300, all of those. Then to the flip cameras, if you remember those, that had the hard drive.
I got one on my desk right now that I'm looking at.
Yeah, flip cameras were awesome. And the only liability a little with the flip and a lot of these early devices would be the audio. There was no place to plug a microphone in. So I think I upgraded to the Kodak. I think it was called the Z10, which had a place to plug a microphone in. And not necessarily my luck, but the way things evolve. All of those companies, Canon is still in business, but they just stopped making the product because everybody takes video on their cell phone now. The current cameras that I use are the Canon ZR series. They're like $250 little flip cameras where the video goes right to an SD card. And those cameras have a really nice audio import where I could use microphones for them and, get audio the best we can record it.
You could probably even get away with, some of the kids in the middle school, would you say like the iPhone 7 or a higher end Samsung could take just as good, if not better video?
I think the video would definitely be the same, if not better. I think on the iPhones, and in my school, we had one-to-one iPads before we switched to Chromebooks, and the video was always awesome. I think the question just was, what type of microphone are you going to use for the audio to be able to get, good audio to go with the good video?
The tech tools and the stuff, while it's valuable, I think something that teachers like you bring to that environment where it's very creative are obviously the lessons and the curriculum that you've built and you've created over the years. What are some of the things that your students are creating?
Well, my students in 8th grade TV production, all of the topics, they come up on their own. So I basically start out by showing some exemplar videos to them and then have them basically brainstorm 5 different ideas, either about the school or it could be anything about middle school life that, they're possibly into, during the year. Then the next step is I conference with them and basically work on getting like an angle of the story with them. Once I approve their topic, to start researching and finding information about it. Then the next step for them is to go research on the internet and also talk to people in the school possibly, depending on the topic. And all of the features start with a 30-second voiceover with pictures, videos, animations. And in the principal's own words, which I actually like about this class, he wants to learn something new from every single feature that we do. Even if it's on a lifestyle, type thing like fall or spring fashion, he still wants some facts in there that would be a good 8th grade piece of writing that the students can record. Then they go out. I'm lucky enough to have a green screen in my classroom. So they usually do a stand-up or the beginning of the feature in front of the green screen. And then they go out and basically at recess, after school, other times we'll go interview students and teachers for their feature. And then during the class time, in a marking period, they'll come about 20, 22 times. They're expected to put out 2 of these video features during the marking period, and they become the content for the live TV show that the 8th graders create every single day.
That is very robust.
Yeah, we have high expectations for them. The exemplars that I'm showing them are all network news. One of them is actually a reporter who lives in Upper Saddle River, lives in town. So I have 2 or 3 of his features that I can show, to my students. And basically, I just want them to get the same format of tell a good story with a good angle, beginning, middle, ending. I really stress to them, have some B-roll, have some video as you're interviewing people. And even though they're 8th graders, to try to make it as, professional as possible. And I also spend a lot of time in the class talking about who the audience is, which is basically the middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and, what would be appropriate questions and topics. And some things that 8th graders discuss are appropriate for the classroom, but not necessarily to broadcast to 500 people live, every single morning.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I like that you're showing them network or very professional, very polished pieces. I mean, if we want kids to be creative, or really if we want to show them anything, why would we show them something that's mediocre? I wouldn't, show them, college or high school. I would show them like what you're doing, network quality productions, and show them what the pros are doing.
Yeah, no, I definitely, agree. And I really find that teaching a video production class, the playing field is like very level, that, if you set the bar high, that's where they're going to go. And a lot of students, maybe in more academic classes, they might not excel as much. But in this of, using video equipment, interviewing people, it always surprises me that, especially on air, sometimes you'll get the most gregarious kid and he'll be like a deer in headlights when he or she maybe goes on the show. And then you'll get someone who's a little bit more on the quiet side, but you know what? The camera comes on and they're reading off the teleprompter or, doing their feature, and their personality really comes through, and, they look awesome on camera. So you never know before they, start recording their features, but they all get a chance to do 2 features in the class.
Now, I just thought of a question about your class. Are you teaching the class? I know it's middle school. Is it a full year course, or is it like the cycles, or is it like an elective?
This is a marking period class. They come for approximately 20 to 22 times. And then I have 3 sections in one marking period. So basically one class is on live doing the show every single morning. And the 2 other classes are creating all the content for the show. So all the openings, Pledge of Allegiance, the features, they're doing all that creative work while another group is practicing to rehearse before they can go on live and actually do the show in the morning. And I'm able to, do that throughout the whole year. And luckily we rehearse for 3 periods. It takes about a week and a half. And then I pretty much average like 170 shows live every single year.
How do you broadcast them within the school on a daily basis?
Right now we're broadcasting through hardware that's connected to the coax in the school. And every single person through their projector up to a smart board are watching the show now. We're in the process of updating to become digital. So there are a few classrooms that we're experimenting with. So they receive a digital feed, and then they would just run it right off of the computer. And something that precipitated that is the school, after a while, you can't find DVR or VCRs that actually have tuners in them, because they tune to a specific station to get the internal feed. And I think that's what precipitated to go digital. So it's just a link on your desktop. You would pull up the show and just show it right from your computer.
Now, I got to thinking, as you were describing what the kids are creating, you and I think we're both creative types. You have a much more extensive background than I do, but, I've got the podcast and I like to do different things to be creative with websites and whatnot. How do you, as the teacher, keep it fresh? Because obviously you're getting new students every marking period and they're seeing everything, all these lessons and projects for the first time. But for you, it's the 4th time in the year or the 3rd time in the year, and it's year after year. How do you keep it fresh as a creative teacher?
So one of the things I enjoy about being a technology teacher is there are so many new things that are out there, different tools that you could use. And that always, keeps it fresh for me of, different things that I could use with the students. And I actually watch, there's a couple other very good broadcasts from middle schools and high schools, around the country. I'll watch their shows, and then that will give me some ideas of maybe what I could possibly, replicate in my own TV studio.
Well, Bruce, education is begging, borrowing, and stealing. Now, you mentioned Chromebooks. Is that what prompted the move to WeVideo?
Exactly. I mean, for me, 100% that once I saw that kids had Chromebooks, and now they would have the ability to continue working on a project on their Chromebook, where in the past, I still love iMovie, but iMovie is a standalone product. And if I start working on computer number 1 in my lab, everything's saved to that hard drive, and every single day I'll have to go back to computer number 1 to continue my work. Where WeVideo is all web-based, so the kids actually set up in groups and they share permissions to their video they're working on in WeVideo. And then they could be on any device. We happen to be on Chromebooks, iMacs, but I know in some high schools they're shooting on phones, any type of phone, uploading to WeVideo, and then it's not platform specific. You can work on a PC or a Mac or a Chromebook, whatever device you have. It's all hooked into the Google environment. You log into your Google account, and WeVideo reads it, and all your work that you've done is there. So it's much different than iMovie, although it has almost every single tool that iMovie has to offer.
Can you give us a couple of examples of what WeVideo is allowing you to do in this web-based environment?
In the web-based environment, when you set up a project, it gives you different choices how you could set it up. You can have a personal project, so it's just one student working on it. It could be a collaborative project where students basically share their privileges within their group. Or it could be a shared out project where the teacher actually sets up the group and can even send all the media, to all the students, if not necessarily in my class, but a social studies class. If a teacher picked out, 100 pictures about the Great Depression, they could send them out to their particular group of their class or their students, and that would be the media that they would use. So it's a much different setup than iMovie. As the teacher, one big advantage is I could go in from any computer, any place, and take a look at what a student has produced the whole year. Not only in my class, but I could see videos they've made the whole year. Go into chapter markers, basically, and I could click a chapter marker, and it's just a text box. So then I could leave feedback for a student and say, great opening, maybe lower your music here, make all the music level. And I could leave them comments right in their video. And that would be something that I never had the ability to do with iMovie. I would do when I conference with them in my class, but I wouldn't be able to do virtually. And then the next class, when they come in, they could see, feedback from me right away on their project. So it just opens up more tools because it is a website. One of the biggest things I learned is to be patient, because you have to refresh once or twice sometimes because you're not saving locally to a hard drive. So you have to be a little patient in the beginning. But once we kind of picked up on how to make the groups and how to collaborate, that was much different than the iMovie experience, where it was one person's iMovie and, the other students were helping them, but still one student had to log in to see it. Where here, you're basically logging in as a group and anybody can go in and work on the project, and even better, at any time of the day. They can open their Chromebook at home or whatever computer they have and continue working on their projects.
Now, full disclosure, you are a WeVideo ambassador, but based on knowing you, I know that whether you were that or not, I think you'd be using WeVideo regardless.
Yeah, I agree. And to give you like an example, even I had a student that came in a couple of weeks ago. I think he was working on a social studies project, and he went to go open up iMovie, and there was, maybe 15 minutes left in the day. And I said, I don't think you're going to finish this in 15 minutes. Why don't you use WeVideo? And the student didn't have me yet. So he said, I'm not really sure, how to use WeVideo. But I said, let me show you, because I think you're going to want to use WeVideo because you're not going to finish in 15 minutes. And I don't know when you're going to come back to use the computer in the lab, before your project is due the next day. But I switched the person over to WeVideo, and then at home, either on their Chromebook or, PC, iMac, any device, they were able to finish it, and hand in their project. So that's just a quick example of, I think the collaborative part of WeVideo, and you could do it on any device, at this point, is winning me over iMovie.
So I guess we could say that the cloud integration and the collaboration part would be two of the more powerful features. What would you say would be, the next best feature of WeVideo?
I think the next best feature of WeVideo is, it seems like they're updating their website and adding in new tools all the time. And I think compared to iMovie, it was a little bit more stagnant of how frequently they updated. To give you an example, like WeVideo just added 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden, instead of just regular subtitles over people who are in your video, they've added all animated graphics, where now you can have the titles come in and go out and, color them and do different things to them. So I think WeVideo is a little bit more of a fluid project, and one of the newest things is the animations that they have on there. The other thing they just added a couple weeks ago was you can actually export out your project in 4K if you would like. I don't know if that's a great idea for schools to use for, storage space and for the amount of time it's going to take to export, but it is a possibility that they added a couple weeks ago. That I guess if you had a 4K TV in your school and you were lucky enough to have that, we don't have that yet, but you could, put student work out in 4K, and it's amazing to use just, a consumer camera, upload to WeVideo, and you would be able to show your work in 4K.
That is awesome. Bruce, you rock.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, I'm proud of, what I created. Like I said, next year I'll be in this school for 10 years, and just doing some quick math, 170 shows a year. Last year we actually celebrated 1,000 live shows that we've done. And we actually brought back the first student, whoever hosted the show. She's a junior in college now, and we had her host the 1,000 show last May.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool, and the kids, the kids got a kick out of it. And just like you asked me before, how the video has evolved, the same thing, is true of doing a live TV show in a school. We started out with 5 students, one person being the announcer, and that's how we started out. And then every year built it up and, added more pieces, more computers, more video equipment. And I'm very lucky where I teach that through the Educational Foundation in Upper Saddle River. They really help out to, fund the TV studio and, keep getting us new equipment. This year we added in new LED lights for like a lighting grid. And in my own head too, it's another job that a student could do to work a lighting board during the show.
Oh yeah, you're providing a lot of practical skills, and this is the point where you're going to get these kids interested in potential careers. So
yeah, no, definitely. And, the whole goal of middle school, in my own eyes and a lot of people, try as many different things as you can before you get to high school, and hopefully, find a path of what you could take and, beyond, to college. And the way this is set up, there's about 17, 18 different jobs on the show. The students get to pick if they're behind the scenes or in front of the camera, and, get to experience that for about 14 shows a year. And then I have some other students who, they love it so much. We have 3 or 4 students. They become floaters, and they basically have done the show the whole year. And if students are late, visiting high school, sick, they will fill in. And at this point, they've learned every single job on the show, and they can, quickly be a video switcher or run the teleprompter or be the host, whatever need be. They fill in and they do a great job.
Bruce, thank you for giving me some time here before you, as you said before we started recording, you're about to glue yourself to your table to help your own child out in education.
Gotta love slime.
For those that want to reach out to you and pick your brain and, even potentially bring you in to offer some professional development, how can my listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. The best way to get in touch with me is through email. My email is breicher, BREICHER @gmail.com. And as you know, I love being part of a PLN and on Twitter. On Twitter, at breicher, BREICHER. And it would be great, to have people follow me. Along with putting out video production things, I also teach Google Apps at my school. And in 6th grade and in 7th grade, I teach coding. So I do a bunch of other things along with TV production. And I think, as you know me well enough too, I love learning new technology, but also, sharing it with other people so they could use it in their school or district. So those would be the best 2 ways to get in touch.
Awesome. And we are definitely cut from the same mold. So I'm surprised I didn't have you on here sooner.
Not a problem. As you said in the beginning, Yankee fan, Met fan, but besides that, I think everything else we're good.
Baseball brings people together, Bruce.
No, I know.
All right. Well, we will. Hey, you mentioned the coding, so I think as I plan future episodes, definitely would love to have you back on to talk coding. And hey, it could always be the hour of code. So you just got yourself in for a second appearance.
No, thank you so much. And anytime, I'm a big fan of the show and listening to, all your episodes and people that you've had on. So anytime you want, it's my pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Thank you.
And now for this episode's EdTech Thought. Today I'd like to talk about inspiring creativity in students. If you're like me and you teach secondary level students, I'd like to know what you're doing to foster creativity in them. In the fourth marking period, I have given my social studies students the opportunity to participate in 20% time learning. My students were able to choose any topic at all that they were interested in learning more about. I did not handcuff them and limit them to only historical topics, and I did so because, in my opinion, social studies is everything. I framed it as follows for them, and keep in mind I teach freshman world history. I clarified for them that up until now, their learning has been dictated to them. What they will learn, how they will learn, and how they will demonstrate their learning. I threw all that out the window, and I gave them the freedom to choose anything that their hearts and minds desired. At the time of this recording, I'm about 2 weeks away from seeing the results of their learning and exploration, and I look forward to sharing more of a reflective piece in a couple of weeks. What I can share now is that not every student is doing something amazing. Many have looked for the easy way out, and there are a handful of students that I believe have wasted their time, and the opportunity that was presented them was wasted as well. But I also know that there are students who are creating and working on some amazing projects, and as I followed their blogs, which again is also something I'm going to be reflecting on in a future episode, some of them are good, some of them are not so good. This was really the first time I've engaged in this type of learning at the high school level. I've previously done it at the college level, where the Rutgers students I work with, in one of the classes, this is their midterm project, and they have about 8 weeks to do this 20% genius hour type of learning. The capstone class that I taught for the first time this last semester, that was basically the whole class. So for a full semester, 14 weeks, the students were able to do what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it. But I'm looking forward to reflecting more on this in a future episode. I just wanted to share a little bit about what's happening right now. Now, why do I share this? First, my point is that this is all okay. That some kids just don't get it. And I think that's okay. Why? Because school, and in particular my classroom, provide them with a safety net. Next time, they might need that net too. But at some point, they're not going to need the net, and they will be able to flex their creative muscles. A little bit of room can go a long way, and I believe that giving students the opportunity to create may take on more meaning for some students the next time around. But what are you doing to inspire creativity in your students? Leave a comment on the show notes. Hit me up on Voxer, Twitter. I'd love to know the types of things that you're doing in your classroom, whether it's high school or not. I'd love to know, and I'd love to engage you in that dialogue, and then hopefully share some things here on a future episode of the podcast. And that is my EdTech thought. And now for the House of EdTech recommendation. Today I'd like to recommend to you Kami, and Kami is Kami. Kami is on a mission to give teachers and students the power to change classroom learning and interaction so they can achieve more together. Kami provides you and students a set of tools to view and edit documents and PDF files. For example, their easy-to-use tools enable you the ability to edit and collaborate on publisher-supplied PDFs, and this is a great tool for Chromebooks. Aside from their web application, Kami is also available in the Chrome Web Store and the Google Apps Marketplace, and it has attracted millions of installations as well as many high ratings. Kami is a proud Google partner. And for more information and to try Kami, go to kamihq.com, and that's KAMIHQ.com. And that is my EdTech recommendation. And now I'd like to, before I get to the House of EdTech VIP, throw a little bit of the banter in here. And again, this is much later in the episode than I normally do it. And what I want to share with you here is a little bit of feedback that I recently got from Kyle Wilcox. He is on Twitter at LevelUpEdTech. And Kyle sent me this via Voxer. So Kyle, take it away.
Hello, Chris Nessie. This is Kyle Wilcox, and I was just listening to episode 83 of the House of EdTech, and I had noticed that you guys had mentioned as a small part of that, Scratch Junior got mentioned. I know the show was mostly about getting grants and stuff like that, but the Scratch Junior, and it was talking about how it was only available on iPads, and that had previously, when I had looked at it up for some teachers a little while ago, that's the only thing I found was that you could only get Scratch Junior on the iPads. But I recently just found it that it looks like it is in the Chrome Web Store now, and I was just wondering if that is very new or if it has the same features or if it has different features, and just maybe if any of the other listeners to the podcast have experienced Scratch Junior on the Chrome Web Store on Windows or Chromebook, and if they have found it useful or if there's any limitations with that. Thanks. Keep up the great work.
Hey, thank you, Kyle, for sending that in. Always happy to get vocal feedback that I can then share here on an episode. And if you missed it, Kyle was referring to episode 83, which is where I spoke with Lynn Smargis about grant writing and all the success that she has had. And if you missed that episode, that's over at chrisnessie.com/83. But to address your question, Kyle, as I looked it up before recording this, Scratch Junior appears to be available for Android tablets, mobile devices, and of course on iOS, as it has been previously. Now, I did follow the link to the Chrome Web Store, and here on my Windows computer, it tells me in Chrome that it's not compatible. I haven't tried it on an Android device, and I will do that. But if you who's listening, if you've used Scratch Junior via the Chrome Web Store and you're using it in an instance of Chrome on Mac or PC or Linux or some other platform, Kyle and I would like to know. So if you could do that and let us know on Twitter. Again, Kyle is at LevelUpEdTech. And of course, I am at Mr. Nessie. Please use the hashtag House of EdTech so we both see it. And we would love to know more about that. So again, thank you, Kyle, for sending that in. And if you ever have a question, send it in via Voxer, or if you go to chrisnessie.com/feedback, there's a great little tool there called SpeakPipe where you can click record right on your computer and you can send a message. Or there's also the House of EdTech feedback hotline, which you can call at any time, night or day or night. I'll be listening. Well, you'll leave a message and then I'll listen. So there you go. Now let's get to this episode's House of EdTech VIP. This House of EdTech's episode VIP is Laura Gilchrist. Laura is an educator, community builder, and she's a teaching and learning coach at Turner High School in Kansas City, Missouri. She's an EdCamp Kansas City and EdCamp Summit KC organizer. She's also a moderator of NT Chat, which is New Teacher Chat on Twitter, so hashtag NT Chat. And she's also a moderator and team member of the Kansas EdChat team, and their hashtag is KS EdChat. You need to connect with Laura on Twitter because she's doing some amazing things on Twitter, facilitating the conversation and helping to move education in the right direction. Connect with Laura on Twitter. She is at Laura Gilchrist, the number 4, and that's LauraGilchrist, the number 4. Congratulations, Laura. You are a House of EdTech VIP. And that's going to do it for this episode, number 87 of the House of EdTech podcast. Thank you for checking out this episode of the podcast. And thank you again to Bruce Reicher for taking some time to share his insight on the great and powerful WeVideo, along with some insight into his TV production program. And of course, if you have more questions about that, make sure you connect with Bruce. Let's keep the conversation going. You can visit the show notes for this episode at chrisnessy.com/87. I would love it if you left a comment on the blog post, or if you sent me an email or anything like that. And you can also do that by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback, and that's going to give you all of the ways that you can connect with me and share your thoughts on the show. The fastest is Twitter. We should be connected on Twitter if we're not. I'm Mr. Nessy, MRNESI, and use the hashtag HouseOfEdTech to make sure I definitely see the awesome tweets and feedback about the episodes. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, the most important thing you can do is actually tell somebody else about the podcast. And I challenge you to do that on Twitter. As I just mentioned, use the hashtag and let people know that you enjoy listening to this podcast. I would also appreciate it, if you have time, if you would to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Your rating and honest review does help the podcast remain front and center for others to discover and enjoy. Thank you to Brad Schreffler from Florida, who recently left this review. Quote, Chris has his hand in some of the best podcasts in education, and his flagship show, House of EdTech, is no exception. He helped me find many great podcasts to listen to help improve my professional development and PLN. Thanks, Mr. Nessy. Thank you, Brad, for taking the time. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And of course, you can also become an awesome supporter. Go to chrisnessy.com/awesome, and you can help the show out. The next episode of the House of EdTech, number 88, will be released on June 18th, 2017, and we're going to talk about things we shouldn't be doing in school, and Dr. Tony Sinanis' hologram will be helping us out. Now, if you find yourself saying, Tony Sinanis has a hologram? Well, I guess you'll have to come back for episode 88 and find out what I'm talking about. Until next time, thank you for learning with me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.